Like, what drives you?
I think marketing has lost the plot. We've overcomplicated something that comes so naturally to humans. We're natural storytellers.
The trend of simple content made with the iPhone. What a great time for an entrepreneur, a salesperson, anybody getting started, building a brand.
To go back to simple, like your iPhone is truly your best friend. Like you can run your entire business on your iPhone. You never thought that a company like Ford could really do better with an ad shot on an iPhone. In a world where it's becoming more complicated and more digital, we actually crave what we know best, which is like authentic human connection. And we're sick of being fooled.
Marketing trumps sales because you can lead them to the water, right? But sales technically is getting them to drink. But with really good marketing, they will sometimes drink on their own.
I talk about this so much because it's such a simple concept that is so mind-blowing to the average business owner. What a lot of businesses miss is I get more bookings on TikTok from men over 60 because they're the ones that are CEOs. Go back to simple, and I want to lead that charge. I really love marketing, and I want to be remembered as a marketing philosopher.
What's going on, guys? We have Camille Moore joining us on the podcast today, and from Canada, right?
From Canada.
Okay, guys, let me give you a quick intro. So Camille, this girl, first of all, I love seeing women succeed in the marketplace and going after it. And so it gets me fired up. So that alone, thank you for the inspiration, Camille. Thanks for being here. Now, let me give you guys a quick rundown. This girl's 28 years old. She's making big moves in marketing. She is president and founder of Third Eye Insights. Okay. And how many clients are you working with now for marketing? I know you're working with some bigger companies, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. So we're a full suite agency. I also am a fractional CMO for some pretty big companies. And then we also do strategic consulting. So we've got a lot of clients. We operate in different capacities. So it's a full roster.
Okay. And you've been at this with Third Eye Insights since 2018. Prior to that, tell the audience what you were doing.
Well, so T, I actually started before I got a full-time job in marketing. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I got myself a job at a law firm in town of where I went to university. And during my internship, I realized that I am not cut out for the law, and I'm much better at marketing. And Third Eye Insights was born. It started as very much I call it my revolve shopping fund. It was at the time and at my age, it was a fantastic, fun side hustle that helped me get me through university. And then to my full-time job, I was actually one of the first CMOs in cannabis. I got a job as a chief marketing officer for Canadian operations for a U.S. company that entered into Canada before Canada went federally legal. I was one of the only chief marketing officers in Canada in cannabis that actually worked with the Liberal government to get cannabis federally legalized. So I was way too young in a job with a ton of responsibility because nobody wanted to jump ship. When cannabis was becoming federally legal, it was still a drug. It was super taboo. All of the big CMOs from big companies, they didn't want to come over because it was a drugs. It was sketchy. Right. It was gross. It was a career killer. But because I was too young to know any better, and really actually knew better because it ended up being one of the coolest things to get into because it was like the Prohibition era, like seeing a federally illegal substance become legalized in a G8 country was historic. So I was a CMO for that. And then I had Third Eye Insights on the side, and both did very well. I got to ride out federal legalization. I was a part of that, working out of California and in Canada. And then I went all in on Third Eye Insights right before the pandemic, and the rest is history.
I love that. And, you're making big plays, big moves. You're growing on social media. You better be within your space, And, but behind every person taking massive action, there's a big why. And we were talking about this briefly before I got on the podcast. I was just itching to ask you the question. And, for the audience sake, why did you, what drives you, Camille? What is behind, the engine that's pushing you to do what you do and to share your message? What do you want the world to hear?
I think marketing has lost the plot, and we've overcomplicated something that comes so naturally to humans. We're natural storytellers. We're natural orators. We understand how to sell and convey through simple communication. And with, there's so many things that are complicated right now between ESG ratings, which are affecting stock price valuation and how companies are rated, and how, hedge funds and mutual fund companies will purchase that stock based off their ESG ratings, to ever changing algorithms and more platforms popping up, and the age differential from a CEO to a social media manager, and all of this noise that is happening. We've lost the plot of marketing. And I think that there's space for a renaissance in marketing to go back to simple. And I want to lead that charge because I really love marketing, and I want to be remembered as a marketing philosopher.
I love that. I was recently just at Funnel Hacking Live with Russell Brunson. I'm sure you know him and that community. And, I was watching some of your content, and one of the things that, talking about simplicity, one of the main speakers and one of the things that was preached was exactly what you said, if that's lacking. And it's actually the trend of simple content made with the iPhone, made with a smartphone,
Lo-fi,
and not with a professional camera setup, right? And so I just think that's fascinating. I mean, what a great time for an entrepreneur, a salesperson, anybody getting started, or, wherever you're at in life, to start building a brand. It's never been easier.
Never. It's never, well, I would even go further than that. Like, it's never been easier to build a business. Right. And to reach and to connect and to sell across borders, right? Like, it's truly never been easier, but I think it's also never felt more overwhelming. And to go back to simple, like, your iPhone is truly your best friend. Like, you can run your entire business on your iPhone. And it's really cool to be in my position because I've felt this passionately and I've had these feelings for so long, but the clients in which it could be validated with up until recently were very different, right? You never thought that a company like Ford could really do better with an ad shot on an iPhone until it was done, right? And it was in that kind of that band differential of like, I just own a dentist, in my local small town, to I'm Apple. And for like Apple to be showing you objectively with data, like iPhone commercials work better for them. Like, low fidelity is how we buy. That's why TikTok is the number one app in the world, because we wanted to move away from over polished, hyper edited content to
why do you think the hyper polished, the super edited, the good cameras, why do you think it's not doing as well? Why are we shifting away from that right now?
It's not real. It's not authentic. Right? Like, we in a world where it's becoming more complicated and more digital, we actually crave what we know best, which is like authentic human connection. And then when I can see your pores, when I can see your how you actually communicate and move, and like your side angles, and like what the product actually looks like, and people like playing, like the Dyson, smartest thing they did is hand their materials to thousands of influencers. And now people all over the world are creating content for them every day on using the Airwrap. Like, that's the best way to sell than to have Kim Kardashian pose with the Dyson on like a posed photo of like #myDyson ad. Like, we want real, right? Like, and we're sick of being fooled. And we kind of went through that duping period for, I want to say 5 years, and the consumer is sick of it. Like, we want to go back to real. And that's why Alex Hormozi does too well. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, please. You can rant about him as much as you want. I really admire Alex Hormozi in a lot of regards, with business, sales, marketing, all the above.
All the above.
Yeah. You mentioned the word connect a few times, like talking about people and how we're missing that. That seems like it's an important word to you.
Totally. I mean, connection is everything, right? Like, and that's one of the things I advocate the most, is authentic connection, whether that's with your customer, whether that's to your brand, whether it's how you approach marketing, like even how does that ad connect with your brand ethos or your brand universe? Like, is that connection authentic, or is it being manufactured or forced? And that's what you're seeing a lot in marketing, is the connection is weak. Like, company like Lululemon trying to push social justice issues that doesn't connect with their core concept being a legging company, right? Like, that connection has to be authentic. And that's what's missing in marketing. Is it's a good point that you pointed out that word, is it's all about connection, period.
It is. Yeah. I love your simple philosophy of like, we're overcomplicating it. It's more simple than we actually make it out to be. And, for sales, coming from a guy who's got a lot of experience and a little bit of success in the sales world, that's everything is connection.
Totally.
Right. And, it's the easiest. I remember my first year selling Camille. I had so many flaws with selling. I was a fast talker. I didn't really understand everything about my product or, all these one-liners to use, right? I didn't know any sales tactics, but what I did know was how to connect with people.
Yeah.
And I always told myself the rapport I had with people or the connection was my backbone, and it allowed me to make mistakes even, or I would get something wrong or I'd have to call the manager and look like an idiot in front of the prospect. But because I had that rapport, it was totally fine. It was smooth sailing. And so that's always been a massive thing for me. And to kind of just add to that real quick, what helps on my side with the connection is understanding who I'm talking to.
Totally.
And that requires investigating, talking to them, and more than just asking questions, but trying to resonate with them and see their point of view and why they think that way. And it requires a selfless mind to, I think, get that, to have the full leveraged connection to the max in business, whether you're selling or you're marketing, whatever it is, right? And so I love that the correlation between sales and marketing with connection.
Well, marketing is sales. Like the only place of where it requires that differentiation is marketing puts the product out there, right? The sale is that connection arm, which is different when you're in a service industry, right? Product, it's more interconnected because the product in and of itself by its marketing is selling, where in the service industry, it can be differentiated a little bit more. But why connection and consistency and character, like those C's are so important. And that's why digital marketing and just putting yourself on video is so important, because you were able to build a connection with me and understand what I was about at a level that words can't quite explain, right? Like the way that the human mind can analyze and synthesize tone, tenor, eye movement, my body language, like you can make an assessment and judgment of me and say, she's my person, and pretty quickly, right? Or in reverse, like that's not my person. And that's what's so cool about the internet is that by investing in connection and creating valuable content that has something interesting to say, I have people all over the world that feel like I'm their person because they could watch a video and assess. But on the other hand, and that's, to kind of go into this a bit in a roundabout way, like our consult now starts on the internet, right? It doesn't happen in the office or on that phone call, right? And I know you talk about this in sales, that you're actually being interviewed now before the interview. And why I love the internet for this reason is for people who I'm not the right fit for, they're also able to determine that before they call me. So my relationship with my clients is so much better because they already know what I'm about. They already know what I'm going to stand for, what shit I'm not going to take, or how I'm going to approach their marketing. I'm not going to give them campaigns that I'm bashing because they know my shtick. So that's really cool too, from a connection standpoint, in kind of a different way for service providers, because you understand my service in a way that like my website could never. Do you get what I'm kind of?
Yeah. Oh, I love this. There's, I've told you I've mastered sales to an extent, like 90%. I'm still improving, and there's so much growth there. But to some extent, I've mastered a lot of sales, and I can tell you from someone who's mastered sales that marketing trumps sales, because you can lead them to the water, right? But sales technically is getting them to drink. But with really good marketing, they will sometimes drink on their own. And because I've heard Hormozy talk about this. We're like, hey, you can't make it drink, but you can make sure that the cow that arrives is super thirsty, Yeah, you can make sure whatever. It's hot. The temperatures, it's on a hot day. So marketing, you can do those things, and there are things you can control. But I think it's fascinating how the better and the stronger the brand, the easier the sale. This is what I've geeked out on, and I've been like, holy cow, like this is the next phase for my business is marketing. because if I master this, the sales will also dominate. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is I've heard some people, and I've even called them out on a podcast where he's like, sales trumps marketing. I'm like, dude, no, it doesn't. Like it's the other way around.
No matter how good your sales, your brand sucks. You're not having the conversation.
Yes, exactly. So I guess here's something we could try to, and we might not be able to find an answer. This might be tough, but there's a lot of organizations that have sales leaders, sales groups that just get leads and are just selling from people in those that they're given. Is there anything that they can do on their own to do like in the world of marketing or Instagram or social media to help drive leads if they're working for another organization?
Oof. Well, yeah. I mean, of course. I'd have more questions to ask. I mean, like, is the product great? Is the brand consistent? Like, are you working with the right fundamentals to take off? Like, if we were to talk about kind of the MLM brands, it's kind of like a starting point where they're kind of giving you all the things, but like you're in charge of kind of taking it to the next stage. The answer is content creation. Like that's the way we buy is through connection through the phone and by selling a promise. And what I talk about a lot, I guess, kind of, and again, in a roundabout way, what most people miss is that they don't understand who the hero is in the equation. And they think that they are the hero and instead the customer is the hero and their product is the guide. And I talk about this so much because it's such a simple concept that is so mind-blowing to the average business owner or salesperson. And I think the better answer to your question is because there's so many, I get asked this question a lot, like, is one thing that you would recommend? And the answer is no. I think why a portion of marketing is broken is so many people are being force-fed tips and tricks that they think that will be the answer to millions. And that's not the case. Like, it has to be customized. It has to make sense for your brand. It has to be strategic. But what I can say consistently, hand on my heart across the board, is no one gives a fuck about you. They give a fuck about themselves. And you got to make sure that whatever you're packaging or you're selling makes their lives or problems or situations better. And then you're in a winning equation. So if you're creating content, it's all about them, their pain points, their fears, where they want to go, what they want to look like, make them feel and look better. They are the hero.
I love that. And the journey starts with a problem.
Completely.
Right?
Always. And and that's like, but it's not your problem. It's their problem.
It's theirs. Mm-hmm.
So when it comes, like, you can do email blast marketing, you could do TikTok content, you could do a podcast, you could do a YouTube form, but it has to be valuable. And that's why I really like that term, valuetainment. And I'm like going all in on it because that's... Yeah,
explain that.
So what a lot of businesses miss is they create social media content that's veiled as ads. And nobody cares. Nobody wants to follow an ad account, right? Like, and the way that we use social media is to be entertained, right? We're an attention economy. If I'm going to click on your content versus someone else, like, you have to give me something valuable. And that's what we're looking for, is valuetainment. When you look at my content, you actually don't really know what I do or what I sell, because none of my content is actually focused on you hiring me. My content is focused that you walk away with learning something or taking away or having something interesting to think or talk about that's valuable to you, because it's about you, right? And by creating content that's valuable to you, you're engaging with me, and we have a connection now. And now we're having a conversation and we're able to talk about marketing because I've given something to you. So valuetainment is the way to win in 2023. And that's really the strategy that you need to use and create when you're creating content. Because if it's not valuable, if it's not interesting, and if it doesn't provide me with something that I'm taking away from it, it's not going to work.
Okay. I love that. Now, when it comes to volume, there's something that kind of coincides here potentially and maybe conflicts as well. Volume, like the volume required to succeed. Now, this is sales, this is marketing. And for me, you could have a sales rep that closes at 10% versus a sales rep that closes at 30%. But the 10% can outsell and often does the higher close rate sales rep. Because they outwork them, they put in more volume. But what happens is the more repetition in volume, you also get better at the skill, and your close rate goes up.
Yeah, of course.
What's your take on just pumping out too much content where it's not good enough, but you're putting the reps in and you're putting tons of content out? Like, where's the fine line? Where's the balance? Gary Vee says pump out X amount per day. The other guy's saying that's way too much. What's your take on that?
I really respect Gary Vee, because Gary Vee was actually the person that got me over my hump and made me swallow my tough pill of like, get over yourself and create content, because creating content wasn't easy for me or exciting for me to do in the beginning either. So for that
why do you think that was, real quick? Why do you think that was?
Because when you're starting out, the people that follow you are the only ones that know you. And
you're worried at perfectionism about what they think.
Completely. Like putting yourself on video and creating content that's like quasi selling yourself. Like I couldn't think of something that made me want to jump off a bridge faster.
I know.
Right. Especially
you're just
worried
about your friends thinking like,
oh my
who
God.
Does Camille think she is? Does she think she's hot shit or what?
Well, that's the worst part about starting, right? Is the people that actually are the worst to you are those who know you. And it's the loose tie phenomenon is a real thing. Like those who meet me now have such a different perspective and respect for me and put me at a higher standard than those who knew me when I was like starting out and like, I'm going to create a marketing agency. Like those are the ones that laugh at you and scoff at you, not the ones that see where you like and who you work with now. And that's why I love the digital world, because by not being hyper-focused on local, I was able to 10x my business at a rate that other people could not, because I wasn't focused on convincing those closest to me. I was convinced on convincing the world. And that was the hard pill that I had to swallow to get over. And it wasn't even Gary Vee alone. It was also my business partner who was like, stop telling your clients to create content. Like it needs to start with you. And I hated it. So, but what I've also evolved in through that journey, and I want to give credit where credit is due, and he deserves credit, because Gary Vee was the far extreme of that message that told professionals to get over themselves. Like the only way you're going to win is by creating content. So he gave you that far extreme of do 5 posts per day, no excuses, respond to every comment, because the alternative is I'm not going to post. Like the message of do, 1 video a day or 3 videos per week, like that doesn't get the critical mass that an extreme opinion does. And you just see that in the world, right? The extremes are those that get the headlines, that make the news, that become those of following. Like we don't follow middle managers that did great. We follow Elon Musk, right? So it's the extremes that make it big. So my perspective has shifted, because I see so many companies and brands that are just producing content to chase trends or to stay relevant or to generate vanity metrics. Like there's a lot of backdoorness that's also happening, as well as a lot of these big companies or even medium-sized businesses or small businesses are being fed false information from marketing agencies that want bigger contracts or want to be able to provide vanity metrics or keep a job. So they're getting bad advice. But the way that you at its core, it's quality over quantity, right? But quality over quantity doesn't mean it has to be perfect. And that's another fine line, right?
Right.
Don't get too ahead of yourself where content never goes out because you're waiting for it to be perfect, but it has to make sense. It has to be strategic. It has to be good enough, but it doesn't need to be. Yeah. So the way that I kind of approach it is, well, I still post 3 to 4 times a week. I'm shooting, once every 2 weeks, and we create batch work of content, because that's what I have to do with my travel schedule and the work schedule. So as a professional, I ensure that I sit down with my producer and I create my content for the 2 weeks, and I'm constantly writing.
Walk us through that process, like a talking head video, a non-podcast clip.
Yeah.
How do you generate it? What's the focus? Do you start with the hook? Like how do you do it?
So most of my content actually comes from like real life conversations. So I use this app called Otter, OTTER. It's an AI application. It's completely changed my life. And I just live my life and I think in terms of content. So like last night I was out for dinner and I was trying to explain to an older gentleman, the difference of lo-fi, low fidelity versus hi-fi, high fidelity. And I kind of was having this really great conversation with him, kind of explaining, the differences of both and why lo-fi is working so well on the internet. And that instantly my brain was like, that's a video, right? So I quickly take a voice note dictation. It's like an audio note clip. It also writes it out. For me, it's nice to see it written because that's easier for me when I'm like prepping my content. but I also brings me back to that moment. Like that for me, for my brain is I can roll, like I can tell the story. Like if I hear my clip from that moment, I can close my eyes and go back to that dinner and I know where that clip is. But to go back to your point, that's my 10,000 hours of training, right? It's been years of creating content and learning the algorithm and what my audience responds well to and what it doesn't. But what I can say as that tip or trick or nugget of info for those who are starting out is the best content comes from what's authentic through those connections you're having with your customers. Like if you're great in sales, that tip, you're like, shit, that's closed for me 3 out of 5 deals.
Yeah.
There's probably a nugget there. Let me take it down. And it's not the first time you do the video where like you nail it. But when you do that 100 times, then you really start to realize like, shit, people think this is really interesting. And that's that's my process now. And that's why I think the content does well is because it's not manufactured. It's not me typing into ChatGPT, what's the trend of the day. It's me living my life as an expert in this space and recounting those moments so that those other 65-year-olds that are on TikTok lost trying to navigate it are like, this is a conversation I wish I could have had with someone like Camille.
That's gold. That's gold, Camille. So rather than sitting down and brainstorming, here's all the things I want to talk about, just live your life, do your stuff. And when the moments come, write it down, note it down. I've actually had a couple guys that my solar company, like we were mid meeting and I don't remember what I was talking about, but right after I finished, he's like, dude, like, I wish the cameras were rolling and you recorded that. Like, he's like, that was fire.
But that's the way that I live. It's like, just, that's a video.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, keep going.
So, well, I mean, on that note too, like, Gary Vee also talks about just have the cameras rolling, And so after that, I'm like, okay, let's just start recording everything. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah. Why not?
Well, that's what I do too. Is like, I'll just put my phone down, like at a dinner, like I'm doing like a brainstorming, I'm with a client. I just have my auto rolling the whole time. And like,
I love it.
I just record it now because I'm like so often and like I try to recount it. And I'm like, I can't. So totally always like it's all content. We live in a content economy, but like and that's the balance is like be obsessed about content, always thinking about content, but then also respect your brand and what your brand is also changes. Like when I talk about this in my content, like if you're Tiffany, your approach to your brand and what you put out has to be different than if you're Gary Vee. Like it has to be. And like Tiffany can't be getting advice from a marketing agency that follows someone like Gary Vee because Tiffany's been a brand that's been around for over 100 years. And their whole ethos has to be around for another 100 years. And I can't say that that's Gary Vee's brand ethos, right? Like he's got a very different brand. So always create content, always be fixated on what is interesting to your customer, but also know your customer and your brand. Yeah.
I think, I feel my mind tends to focus and wander. Like when I go into depths of like business, it tends to go towards the customer and their experience. And I think in autopilot mode in business, a lot of people lose sight of that. They're thinking of revenues, profits, KPIs, which are all very important things. But, you look at, I remember studying Jeff Bezos and he's just absolutely obsessed about customer experience. Sam Walton, who built Walmart, same thing.
Nordstrom.
And you see this, same, there's a recurring theme there. And, this is on a one-to-one basis, but also building out an organization and a strategy. If you can think about your prospect situation or your ideal client, your avatar, you're going to get some of your best content from that. And I love what you're saying about using Otter. That's a golden nugget. I had another business guy tell me to use it and I didn't. And so thank you, Camille. I'm going to download the app today, start recording all the content. And guys, to reiterate what this app does, Camille, it basically everything it transcribes everything for you into a written document. Right. And
audio. That's what I also love about it. Like extra is that you can also hit play.
That's awesome. So that's gold. But I think it's this, and I've heard success leaves clues, and I look for the clues in where the dots align. And another thing right here where the things align is on just living your life in the random moments that something hits, note it down. I know Alex Hermosi, he does this. And people ask him, where do you put your best content ideas, like on a note or on a Google Doc or like a CRM? He says, no, I just post it out to Twitter.
Smart.
But what he does, Camille, is when it comes, he does it. He just jots it down. That's his notepad.
Yeah. And I think I really respect Alex Hermosi. Like I honestly, I really I really jive with that human being. But I think also what comes like that to me doesn't work for me because my process is more like that storytelling element, right? Where for me, like when I write it down is it's not, more leverage, less power. Like he kind of has more of those microscript, like soundbite statements. For me, it's more like, okay, this ad by Tiffany is really bad. So like I'll write down like bad Tiffany ad, like M dash April Fools, right? And like that to me wouldn't be a tweet, and it would be like it'd be so that to me doesn't work. But I mean, I think the premise is the same: is that everyone is too busy. It's not convenient for anyone, but it's the difference between like not only having the best customers, what I think is the most important thing is that you're going to make more money, you're going to be more successful. It's the best marketing you could ever do in your life. Assume that's kind of understood. But the second kind of unintended consequence is that connection piece is so real. Like I've met clients that have become great friends because they're my people, and they in a way that you can't quite understand until you go through it. Like the people that reach out through TikTok are people that I'm like, I'm so thankful that I put myself out there because you're the best client and brand that I could have ever work on. And some of them are the biggest brands in the world, but they're like my brand. Like they're the brands that I already wear because they're like, she's our customer. And I'm like, and it makes sense for me to market them and not be an RFP that is just being put out. And it's like, it comes down to price. It's actually that connection. And you can only get that through creating content. So it's worth your time. There's so many hacks. Figure out what works for you and make it happen because it's never convenient, ever.
Well, look at this. I mean, this is one of the biggest excuses. I see so many entrepreneurs and anybody, or somebody aspiring to start a business. It's just too much. They're overwhelmed. It's like, just go get started. You don't need to like block off an entire day for content. It's just live your life, and live your life and just document as you go. And I mean, what a great skill set outside of social media, outside of marketing, documenting things. I think it's so great. You learn so much. There's insights for yourself. And I've always done this myself. And I just started, over the years sharing it. And I'm like, oh, this is a good idea. This is working a little bit. But I think a lot of people stop themselves because they don't have time, and this solves that problem. And then two, they're like, oh, I don't want to show off here. I don't want it to be all about me. But if you understand, like if you're actually discovering things that are blessing your life, whether it's marketing, sales, or, fitness, whatever it is, and you don't share that, I think you're a jerk. That's selfish of you, and I almost see it as an obligation to share that. If you found something that really improves your life, you should sell that. You should take the time to market that. What do you think about that?
Always, I completely agree with you, but to also soften it, to give inspiration for those who are holding themselves back. Like the reality is that people that are the best at what they do are the worst at marketing themselves. And I find that this actually connects the best with people who are holding themselves back because they're so sick of and frustrated of seeing the Joe Schmo from their local town or their local area that's their number one competitor that actually isn't great at what they do, doesn't serve their customers the best, doesn't have the best product, like isn't actually the best person for the job. And they truly think that they are. But because they're not putting themselves out there, nobody can find them. And that often is like the light bulb that really like turns on for them, because if they're putting their faces all over buses and billboards and they're all over socials, and I'm trying to find a lawyer or a solar panel company, like what options do I have to go off of? If you're not putting yourself out there showing me that you're the best person for the job, why would I choose you? I don't know you exist. And it's that, I think it's that moment where and to also add to that, it's not a millennial thing. It's not a Gen Z thing. It's an everyone thing. Like you see 70-plus-year-old ladies, they're all over Facebook. They're Googling. I show up with my grandmother who's almost 90, and she's like letting me know that there's all these add-ons on Amazon. She's like, hey, do you know that you can add these on for free? She's like commenting on my Instagram photos. Like, grandma, like you're 90. Like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm stuck at home. And she's like, I'm not slow. Like I just opened up an account and it's not a kid thing. And like TikTok's
Yeah.
not a kid thing. Like it's over 1 billion users. It's surpassed Google. I get more bookings on TikTok from men over 60 because they're the ones that are CEOs. They're the ones that have have rode up the chain and are now running the company. Like it's not people like us. And like I think when people realize that the world is online, and if you're not putting yourself out there, being embarrassed about it is only going to not allow your business to survive another 5 years because everybody else is doing it. Get over it.
Oh, I love that, Camille. That's so much gold in that. So many things to unpack. That's awesome. So, give me some good examples of like, when I think of structuring and building out content, I'm kind of changing gears a little bit here. I think of hooks, and going to Funnel Hacking Live for me, Brunson and the whole community there was very big on the first several seconds. And again, sales, marketing, whatever, in the sale, their first few seconds, there's so much, and a lot of it's not even what you say; it's how you look and how you sound, right? And with marketing especially, it's like you've got about 1 or 2 seconds, sometimes 3 or 4. So what advice do you give when crafting a hook, whether it's cutting a podcast for an editor or to, if you're doing a talking head video or it's a candid shot with your team, like what's your framework on a good hook?
Okay. Well, 2 things to that. I think as a starting point, like literally this conversation couldn't be more important. Like the way that the actual algorithms decide to push your content is how users respond within the first 5 seconds. So if people are like clicking off or not clicking it at all, it completely changes how the algorithm sorts not only that post, but your profile. So taking the thumbnail, the headline, and that hook seriously is literally the difference between you wasting your time or making tons of money. So it's super, super important. I think the way to approach it is, again, it's as a starting place, the customer is a hero. So you should be doing something
right.
that is speaking to them, speaking to their fears, speaking to their pain points. But also controversial. And I wish another word existed, because I think as soon as we talk about controversy in social media, you go to like Alex Jones, or you think of like controversy in like the derogatory sense of the word. But
yeah,
controversy on the internet is just not vanilla. Like it's just not boring. Like me saying in the first video that went viral, which is like marketing and storytelling, was controversial. Like people are like, no, it's not. And like marketing,
that's crazy.
It's not a controversial statement. Like, so you just have to say something that is like, okay, that's a bad example, because please don't use that as your guide. But the point is that it needs to be controversial, because if there's space for people to disagree, that is like the best thing for your content, because you're going to get more people that are actually going to defend you and fight other people. Because anything that's like controversial in a way that is not derogatory, but just allows people to on either side defend for you or work against you.
Yes.
I think a lot of people don't want to say anything controversial because they're afraid of the internet. I can say that the best thing that you can do for yourself is speak your mind, be authentic, and say something interesting, because otherwise, why am I listening to you? And I'm not going to. And more people are probably going to agree with you than you think. And those that do not are such a blessing for your algorithm, because the more comments you have, it's telling the algorithm how much more engaging the post is, and it's going to push it to more people. And the most controversial things that I've said have had the most positive impact, because it's not actually controversial. It's just interesting.
Yeah. I love that. I love that perspective. Yeah. I see a lot of very successful influencers, especially as of late, not just accidentally post things that are controversial, but they fully lean into it. And one case study is Bradley and Andy Elliott. And so Andy Elliott's a sales trainer. Okay. And a couple of his posts, one of them was he's talking about how you should have sex every day. And, there's a 93-year-old in front of the stage, and I think it was just so great. And it obviously this post has done very well. And he's had a lot like that, where obviously that's going to be controversial for some reason, right? And but they're not afraid of that. And so I got a lot of mentorship from Chris Crone, who lives out here in Utah, and he's a big influencer. And a big recurring thing with him, Camille, was not caring what people think.
Don't care.
I think that's what stops us.
It's so hard. It's so much easier said than done. But like, someone on the internet saying you should have sex every single day, like, why shouldn't you? Like, if someone is looking for that opinion and you feel passionately about that, that's how you're living your life. Like it's only their opinion to say no.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
It's only their opinion to say, like, well, what if you have a heart condition? Well, thanks for commenting. Like, we didn't take into account all of the, like, that's such a perfect example that you just brought up, because that's exactly what I mean by controversial. Like, it's your opinion. And like, that's what we're here for, is like, there's a tribe of people that are wanting to hear that are wanting to say, like, thank you for allowing me to live my life. I've been waiting for someone to say this. Opposed to, like, and that's the issue, is that no one is fucking saying anything. And, and we need to say stuff. Like, we need to, like, there's a really interesting quote by Ogilvy that people say what they feel, not what they think. And those that are really winning online are saying what they think, and that's like the issue right now with politics. It's the issue right now with how people are approaching branding, that people are saying that they really feel passionate about these like political or social justice issues or whatever is, the hot topic of the month, but they're not actually telling you what they think.
One thing I want to talk to you about is, I think the art of storytelling is fascinating. And you're talking about the hero's journey. This is verbatim. Like, I have this in my sales training course, is this hero's journey. And I love hearing you say, Camille, like, it's not as common. Like, you'd think people would understand this part of business, but a lot of people don't. In listening to you and from the study I've done with storytelling, it starts with generating a problem. And great entrepreneurs and great salespeople can pitch a problem. And so a lot of that starts with right there. Like, if you were to because we hear a lot of things on social media saying, hey, you got to have really good content. And so what makes a good piece of content? We could have something really valuable for the audience, right? And it could be entertaining. But because the intro, the hook, or the beginning part wasn't good enough, or because they couldn't relate, AKA a problem, it wasn't, they're not going to even it's not going to reach them. How do you think, other than, we're talking about how people can live their life and as they experience things, note it down. Is that the best way to find out these problems? Like, any other ideas, like surveying your industry, or things like that, to discover problems of your ideal avatar? What do people actually want to hear? What problems are my ideal avatar having, so that I can hit the nail on the head with content?
I think for you to be as a starting place for you to be good at what you do, I think you should know what your customers' core pain points are. I fully agree. And if you don't know, if you don't know them on a personal level, then you're not actually good at what you do. And I think that's kind of the first place to start, because it can't be manufactured. And we talk about how important connection is throughout this podcast, and in order for marketing to be done well, like, it has to be authentic. So you have to truly know what their core pain points are and what are their issues. I think for a lot of people, it's, especially when you're so in the weeds, it's difficult. It's difficult to even kind of understand where to start. So an exercise that I recommend it's called creating target market personas. So you actually create like real avatars, like name them, give them an age, personalize them. Like, what do they do for, like, how do they use social media? Like, what do they do on the weekends? Like, actually create like real personas, and create maybe 3 of them. Usually it's about 3 that we do. And it depends on how niche your business is, because maybe it's just one. And I talk about this in a video that Taco Bell actually only has one target market persona, and it's a 25-year-old stoner that drives a Honda Camry and lives in his mother's basement. And once you know that, their marketing is actually fantastic, because everything is actually tailored to that persona. But jokes aside, it's my favorite story. I love it. You should create kind of those personas, and then from there start to create problems. Like, is it money? Is it time? Is it is it a conversation that they have to have with their partner that they don't want to have? Like, what are those friction points when you develop those 3 personas? And then from those friction points, start to create kind of a tree. And I call them content pillars. And it's how you can keep your content being kind of engaging. And the reason why we created content pillars is when I was working with a customer or client for 3 or 4 years, it became very boring to find new ways to market their business, right? And for the most part, when you're selling solar panels, you're selling solar panels. Like there's so many different ways for me to say, okay, let's make solar panels exciting. And what happens if you don't do this properly is you start to like creating ads and like marketing for solar panels that actually completely moves away from their core pain point. You see a lot of businesses do this where like their ads become so complicated and they take too many calories to actually understand, and then they've completely lost the plot. So to make it simple, by creating those kind of those friction points or those pain points, which are always on why they can't buy, may I add. So it's always about what is their reason why they cannot purchase from your company. That's their starting point. And then once you have those, figure out different content pillars to elucidate or to answer those pain points. Maybe it's testimonials. Maybe it's maybe it's ways that you can get financing. Maybe it's basically by creating content pillars like client experience or what the relate pillar is. So like relatable content pieces or convincing content pieces that's more sales focused or, I don't, this would be quite, I don't want to go too far in the weeds where I'm getting too like technical and complicated.
I'm loving this. I wanted to ask you about these pillars, but keep going.
But basically the idea is like by developing a way to create content out of the friction points, you can create an unlimited amount of content that no longer feels repetitive for you in the driver's seat, but is extremely interesting and converting for your customer. And Alex Hormozi, before you get into the questions, he does a really great video on this on Chick-fil-A, and where he talks about how Chick-fil-A never got bored of doing something simple. And that's why they're so successful. So they're not trying to introduce bowls or wraps or complicated things. They're just really great at chicken sandwiches. So like become really great at creating.
Yeah. They knew, okay, here's all these opportunities we could chase. You know, we got 20 different things, but one stands out. And for them, it was chicken, right? And so let's focus on all of that. Put all our eggs in that basket. No pun intended with the chicken. Just to add to this point, I think it's fascinating. Jeff I've referred to him twice in this podcast, second time here. I don't sweat him. I actually don't really like him that much. I don't love him, but just something to note from his success in Amazon. I love that they did this. Okay. In every meeting, and to this day, I still believe they do this. There's always one empty chair in every meeting. And that empty chair represents their customer. And I think that's fascinating that Amazon pioneered this concept. And so exactly what you're talking about, Camille, you see some of the biggest companies, greatest companies that have that are ran from the United States and have impacted a lot of people in the world follow this principle. And it's customer focused, right? And it's what are they wanting? I love that. I think that's a great answer. Let's talk about, kind of get a little personal here with my content. And I have seen some of the best sales trainers, and I've been studying a lot of their stuff. First of all, would you recommend, like, where's the line drawn from copying other people and then being authentic on your own? Like copy the framework and like the strategy, and then, you know, like what things do you copy? What do you not copy?
I don't know if copy is the right word. I think like be inspired.
Okay.
Like when I think of copy, like if I was to copy Gary Vee, like it wouldn't work because like that's not authentically me. Right. But I also think that people don't do enough to actually be the best. And like to be the best, in order to do the work, that means you have to study from the best, right? So you have to consume content. You have to have a pulse on the zeitgeist. You have to know what's going on in order to do it well. And to do things well, you should learn from the best. Like I love listening to Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins helps me be a better communicator because he's so great at speaking. And I can listen to hours of this content, but I don't come out where people are like, shit, she sounds just like Tony Robbins, right? it comes down to being authentic. Like, I've gotten better at creating content, at communicating, at conveying things in a simpler way, but that's not copying. That's getting better at your craft. So I think that there's it I think there's a lot of people who become obsessed with like the Hermoses and the Gary V's, where they're not being authentic in their delivery and in their brand, and it's hard for me to kind of direct that in a different way, because obviously on the face of it, it doesn't make sense. Like, people want to have a relationship with Nick that's different than their relationship with Gary Vee. Like, you can all exist within my mini universe of who I follow and respect and look up to, but like, your brand is very different than Alex. Even though you like Alex and I like Alex and Alex likes Alex, we all have different brands, but we can respect those who is good. So I think the takeaway for that has to be like, if you actually are committed to doing this well, you gotta learn from others and have mentorship, like in anything else. But copying is not a strategy.
Yeah, I like that. So I think the reason I asked that is because studying and learning from other people's success is smart, but then where's that line drawn of don't just copy and paste, and I guess, how much of it is it just going to be focused on the framework and the principles? For example, if I'm looking at a video that's done or content that's succeeding for another influencer in my space, and rather than copying verbatim what he's saying or his hook or the whatever, my philosophy, my approach would be, what's the principle? Why is this succeeding? They asked a question on a pain point about when a prospect asks this question. Oh, we haven't been gearing our content towards that, And so I think understanding the principles of why their content did well, would you agree with that, Camille, that that's a good strategy to go about?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that that's copying. Like, I think that's learning. So absolutely. Like, I had to watch a lot of content of who got the highest counts and like how they edited their content so that I can ensure that my content is engaging, right? Like, there's like Michael Jordan watches tapes of other players. That's not him copying. Like, that's him improving, right? Like, if you want to be the best at what you do, like, you have to know who's in your league and who's playing the game. So like, of course, right? And I think that has to happen if you want to be at the top and you want to be the best, because the algorithm is changing. Like, simple at its heart is like the core principles to marketing have never changed. Whether you were in Rome and on a soapbox selling bread, or if you're now on TikTok selling mascara, like, what's going to work is what's going to work. It's not just the medium has changed, not the message. But in order to be the best, you have to have a pulse on how that medium is changing so that you can maintain the message, or you can enhance the message to how it's kind of growing. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. That was amazing stuff. And how can people find you on social media?
Well, Camille Moore is where I post the majority of my tips and tricks. I mean, Third Eye Insights is where you can follow the agency, but if you want to follow more kind of on the marketing thought leadership and I call it I'm going to be the Marcus Aurelius of marketing philosophy. It's on the Camille Moore. It's just my full name. I really, really appreciated being here, Nick. This was awesome.